How did you feel when you first found out that you were getting on the list, or when you were called for transplant?
Well, when I first got placed on the list, it was in March of that year, 2013. And I was pretty sick then at the time like that. I can't remember what liter of oxygen I was on. I was on the list for a couple of weeks due to the time that I was placed on the list. I was brought in here to emergency, and I really was in the hospital waiting for the lung to arrive. And I was here for, I think, 10 days. And then I received the lung. I don't remember too much about the week prior to the transplant. But up to that point like that, that every time the phone rang, I did get excited, and to come on the screen like that. And it was kind of exciting, and I was looking forward to it.
Yeah, when I first got on the list, I was excited because my options looked pretty grim when I left the doctor's office the day I came in for the interview to see if they'd put me on the list, because I had quite a few things going against me. I had a hole in my heart, and I had a hiatal hernia, which they really frown upon because they feel that was one of the things that contributed to the IPF lung disease. And I have AB positive blood, and as soon as she saw that I had AB positive blood, she said that my chances were really slim of even getting a lung, because only 3% out of 100 have AB positive blood, and so the odds of a donor were slim. So when I left the office, I didn't even think I was going to be put on the list because of the way the doctor talked about the different things.
One of the first exciting times for us was when the coordinator, Carrie Kumar, told us that we had made the list after all the tests that we had gone through. And it was exciting, and it was a celebration in our mind, because it was the first accomplishment that we had made towards being able to extend my life.
Excited, really excited. There were a few barriers initially, but I was just really excited that I was being accepted into the program. When I received the call from Jill, I happened to be in the city that day. I was picking up my daughter from work, and the call came, and we were sitting in the car in shock. I'd been on the list for almost 4 years, and really was going around just doing what I normally do, not knowing if I ever would get lungs at all. Being on the list for 4 years was really an emotional roller coaster ride. I didn't really understand why it would take so long, but recognizing my blood type and my PRAs were a little bit high, they always kept me informed that it would be somewhat difficult, or it might happen right away. And after a while, you just say, well, I can't stop living. At the end of the day, you still have to keep living and doing the things and enjoying the people that you want to be with. So that's how I got around it. Plus, I have a lot of faith in God. He didn't bring me this far just to leave me.
Getting on the list here at UCSF was a little scary. I think I was the first person from the Kaiser Health System to have a lung transplant here at UCSF. And neither my doctor or I from Kaiser really knew the people that well or what the process would be like. So I was a little intimidated by the process. And I remember, this is unheard of now, but I remember photocopying my files personally at Kaiser and bringing them over here to UCSF just to make sure that they were here on time, because I just wanted to have my package be so complete and be approved for this procedure. It was being called in for a transplant. Again, this was in 1994, so at that time we had pagers that we wore, and my pager had gone off once in a false alarm, sort of in the middle of the year. But then after almost exactly 1 year of having that pager, it went off, and it was the real thing, and it was a Sunday night. And I remember just feeling like, this is the start of, a new part of my life. And I came here and to UCSF, and it was just, it was amazing. It was scary and it was thrilling at the same time.
When I was told that they'd found lungs for me and that I was having a transplant, I was actually really excited. The nurses had told me that I might be really nervous and that they would kind of walk me through it, but I just felt like this was really, really the right thing for me, and I was completely calm and ready to do it. Which probably sounds like a lie, but it was totally true.
I was excited. I'd always heard tales of people having to go through 3 or 4 attempts to get listed and so forth and so on. And so when I got listed on the first try. I mean, I knew that meant I was sick enough to need to be listed, but at the same time, I was happy about it. It was kind of funny. I was in the hospital quite a long time waiting on lungs to become available for me. And so I think when the nurse came in, it was like 5 a.m. in the morning. And at that point, I kind of resolved that maybe I wasn't going to get lungs because I had waited a very long time. So I was actually a little bit upset. I was kind of like, don't play with me. It's kind of serious. I was 5 a.m., I'm sleeping. And they were like, no, I'm serious. We think we have lungs for you. So then I was cautiously optimistic. As the day went on and the reality got a little bit more real, then I started to get happy about it. But I wasn't nervous that day at all. It was, I think my being upset that morning was just a product of the long wait I had before. And then throughout the whole day, I wasn't nervous at all. I was pretty excited about it. I mean, but at that point, I had 2 options, either get the lungs or not make it. So it was one way or the other for me.
How did I feel when I was called in for transplant? That's a little story all by itself. My daughter Bridget, who was one of my caretakers, had knee surgery in January. And she had knee surgery the same day as I was listed. And I think it was January 28th or January 29th of 2010. And so I was going to be her caretaker at home, taking care of her, helping her rehabilitate. So I didn't even think about being listed. I was happy to hear that my insurance had approved it. I got the phone call that everything's a go. Be patient. Don't expect a miracle overnight. It's not going to happen that fast. Well, 13 days later, my phone rang, and I believe it was Jill from the transplant office who said, Dr. Hoops has lungs for you, and he wants you to come down to the hospital tonight. And I said, how long do I have? She said, you have about 2 hours. We need you to be down here within 2 hours. So I quickly took a shower. We woke Bridget from her sleep, and she said, I'm going. And so my husband and Bridget and I all came to the hospital, and we slept in the bed together. They took some blood, and the lasting effect of that night was I have a difficult time today talking on the telephone. That call has affected me eternally, I think. And I don't like to take showers because those were the 2 things that happened that night, was that phone call and that shower. So I have now migrated back to the shower, and only if I really love the person that's calling will I answer it.
When I found out I was getting on the list, I was quite happy because I wasn't sure if I would be, because I'd been turned down by another hospital. I was totally surprised. I remember it was August 17th. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. Carrie called and said, Pat, we have a perfect match, and can you be here in an hour? And I had a little go-to bag, but it only had a toothbrush and a book in it because I thought I would be on the list for 6 months or more, and it was like 2.5 weeks that I was on the list. So it was quite exciting, scary at the same time too.
When I first found out that I was getting listed, I got the call from Carrie. I was getting my flu shot at my local hospital, and I went out and got the call, and she's told me I've been listed, and I was excited. I was ready for it. I felt like I'd prepared and was in the right spot emotionally and mentally and everything, so it was a good day. I was very nervous. I think it was like the most I had ever, was shaking really bad. I probably shouldn't say this because I was driving and I answered the call because I was like, oh, it's the hospital. I should probably answer this. And luckily, I was in San Francisco that day. My sister had flown in from Wisconsin. It was her first time ever being here, so she always wanted to see San Francisco. So we had spent the last 2 days here, and my brother was actually with us too. So I got the call as we were about to go over the Bay Bridge, and I kind of freaked out, almost hit a pedestrian. I mean, it was pretty intense. So she said, turn around and get here as quick as you can. And so I was trying to call my caregiver, which was now my boyfriend, Mason, because my mom had passed away and she was going to be my caregiver. So I couldn't get a hold of him. I tried every number. Nothing was working. So I finally called the local little restaurant that he eats at, and he was there. So he got here within about 3.5 hours, so he was booking it too. But as soon as I got to the hospital, I felt like I was at peace, like I felt like, okay, everything's gonna work out and I'm ready for this. And I got my sister here and my brother, and I felt like it was supposed to happen that way. And I was we were on our way home to go to a benefit that was being thrown for me in our town, and I was really nervous about going because I couldn't breathe, and so the thought of talking to everybody, it just seemed exhausting, and I really didn't want to be there. And I actually had told some of the people who were throwing it, I said, I had this feeling like I'm going to get the call that day. The day that the benefit is, I'm going to get the call. Like I said that to a couple people, and it ended up happening that way. And they were celebrating and dancing in the streets at night, and I was getting my transplant. So it worked out perfect.
The way I felt when I was listed seemed a little anticlimactic because I'd gone through so much testing that I knew that I was moving towards that being the final result. The way I felt when I got the call was much quicker than I was expecting. And right after I hung up the phone, I remember just shaking all over. And my husband took over at that point, became the most amazing caretaker, moved me towards the car. We grabbed our suitcases and got on the freeway in the middle of the night and headed towards San Francisco.
Two different feelings about getting on the list. Getting on the list itself and hearing my lung allocation score was kind of anticlimactic, because I think once I finally said yes to going on the transplant list, for me it was a done deal. So being officially on the list was nothing. But I did get a false call maybe 3 months after I got listed. And I had thought I was ready. I had my bags packed, and I thought I was ready emotionally. And it was a good thing to have a false call. I was physically ready, but it was just nice to get a preview of what I hadn't done, what I could do better to prepare, and to know what kinds of feelings were going to come up when I actually got the call. So, and then when I did get the final call, the real "this is you, this is it" call, I was prepared. I had made the decision. It was 1.5 years later, but it was I've already decided to do this, and here we go. The adjustments I made after the first false call were small but significant things. Having the number of the person that was going to take me to the hospital more readily available. The email that I was sending out to people to say, I've gotten the call, it's a go, was written in advance. It's like, there's no way I can compose this email after I get, the call. So that was written in advance and ready to go, along with some things about the house, calling work, calling the people that are going to take care of the house. So there were small things like that, but would really be important once I got the real call.
First, finding out that I was on the list was a relief, first of all, because it seemed like such a long, trip to get to that point, but relieved. And then whenever I got the call for the transplant, I was a little apprehensive because I didn't want to get too excited, because they often say that you have a couple of dry runs. But by that time, I just kind of realized, just be calm, take it a day at a time, and let it all work out. And that made me feel much better. It was relief to know that I finally got the transplant.
When I first went on the list, I was personally elated. I was so sick at that point that I knew there wasn't much alternative. So for me, it was going to be something that was going to enable me to have a second chance at life. When I got called for transplant again, I was just fantastically elated because I was sitting in the ICU at Kaiser at the time, really worried about what was going to happen next.